Hey, it's me, Samby. America has a relationship with vaccines that could best be described as it's complicated. But when vaccines are thoroughly tested and responsibly produced, they're literally lifesavers. We need a COVID one if we're ever going to get our country back on track and, more importantly, end Zoom calls once and for all. Here are our best pieces about vaccines, both COVID and otherwise. Some rare good news. Tech companies are actually starting to fight anti-vaccination propaganda.
The Greater Good is a documentary challenging the scientific consensus that vaccines are safe. It's one of at least 5 films that Amazon apparently pulled from its popular streaming video service. Facebook has pledged to reduce the ranking of pages that spread misinformation about vaccines. Google says it's reducing recommendations of content that can misinform users in harmful ways. And Pinterest stopped serving results for searches related to vaccines.
Sadly, Pinterest has not stopped serving results for DIY tampons, full of designs that will toxic shock yourself. Unfortunately, the anti-vax movement has been spreading faster than Legionnaire's disease at the Playboy Mansion. The percentage of unvaccinated children has quadrupled since 2001, and the World Health Organization has listed vaccine hesitancy as a top 10 threat to global health, right below telling a woman to smile. Anti-vaxxing propaganda grew out of one now debunked and fraudulent study in 1998 by a doctor who subsequently lost his license. From those humble beginnings, the anti-vax movement exploded with the help of the internet, well-funded anti-vax groups, and hamburger bride Jenny McCarthy. It is dumb to form medical opinions on a false study by an unlicensed doctor. It's even dumber to take medical advice from someone who couldn't even figure out the Masked Singer unicorn was Tori Spelling. So, once more for the anti-vaxxers in the back, vaccines do not cause autism. Thank you. And also, don't treat autistic people like their existence is worse than a pandemic. Whether anti-vaxxers fear side effects, resent government involvement, or downright believe and spread conspiracies, the biggest problem is a failure to understand that vaccines are a public health issue.
Do I believe that I'm causing harm by not vaccinating my child? No, I don't. Because if the vaccines work, who am I putting at risk?
So let's talk about that. If your child gets pertussis by not getting the vaccine, and your child passes it on to a delicate newborn,
I really don't believe it. I feel like first of all, I feel like it would be responsible to then quarantine my child and not expose them to other, potentially fragile populations.
a lot of diseases are transmitted before you even know you're sick.
It's true. Like when I got pink eye, I just thought my eye was making its own pussy hat. Hashtag resist. We are seeing the impact of anti-vax beliefs now. So far in 2019, measles cases have been reported in 15 states, with 6 outbreaks and 3 states declaring a state of emergency. It's important to note, measles is one of the leading causes of death in children worldwide and was fully eliminated in the United States in 2000. But now there are outbreaks, and if vaccination percentages dip much more, herd immunity could end and vaccinations would be rendered far less effective. Despite the reality of what happens when children contract these diseases, there are anti-vax bills proposed in 20 states and almost 500 anti-vaccination websites. On the other side, there are simply studies from the CDC and World Health Organization whose reach and sway is often dwarfed by that of the anti-vax lobby. And who are you going to believe? Leading authorities on medical science or 800 memes on your cousin's Facebook page? Of all the incredible scientific achievements in human history, electricity, space travel, mood rings, vaccines are one of the most incredible. To keep our children from dying unnecessary, painful deaths while positively contributing to the overall well-being of society is the absolute definition of a win-win situation. There is a ray of hope in all of this. While many anti-vaxxers will never accept facts, they're children, the same children who are currently at risk of diseases we've never seen outside of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Just might, like Ethan Lindenberger, who got himself vaccinated when his parents would not. He told his story to the Senate and also to me. Take a look. You rebel. Look at you. When did you first learn that you had not been vaccinated?
It was like a thing where my mom would talk very vocally about how she thought vaccines were very, very bad. She would talk about how they cause autism and brain damage, and probably like 15, 16, 17, like I started pursuing that research and even confronting my mom with it. So I remember going to her with CDC articles saying like, vaccines do not cause autism. And she was like, that's what they want you to think. That's not true.
Okay, and who did you turn to?
So I turned to Reddit when I was back in November and asked about getting vaccinated without my mom's consent or approval.
Okay.
And everyone's responses were extremely supportive.
Sorry, people on Reddit gave you good advice.
Great advice, actually.
Like Reddit?
Yes.
The USA Today of white supremacy? That Reddit?
It just depends on where you go.
So in this case, teens rebelling against their parents is actually a good thing.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
Like in Riverdale.
I don't know if that's necessarily
Too
the
late.
same.
I did it. The teens are here.
Hey, Sam.
Oh my God, Archie, are you hurt?
The opposite, actually. I got vaccinated.
Vaccinated? I don't do that stuff. My parents don't approve.
I looked online and realized I didn't want to die from tuberculosis. I would rather die in a more normal way, by a cult.
Wow, you make vaccination sound so cool. Maybe it is bad to get diseases from the Middle Ages.
Just another day in full Fronterdale. Archie and Sam finally know the truth about vaccinations. Just hope everyone else opens their eyes before it's too late.
You know we can hear you, right?
Sam,
Mom.
I heard you've been getting wrapped up in vax talk, Samantha.
How could you not tell me that vaccinations are good for me?
Don't disrespect me.
Too late.
How could you do this to me?
Moms, right?
Wow, so I guess getting vaccinated is cool. Rebelling against your parents to make sure you don't get tetanus is hot.
Now let's go out there and win that football game singing competition.
Well, this is pretty cool, right?
Haven't I been through enough?
You loved it, Ethan. I don't think they know I'm 50. Americans are as desperate for an end to this nightmare as they are for this one. Unfortunately for us, the first one is in charge of defeating the last one.
We are marshaling America's scientific genius to produce a vaccine in record time before the end of the year and maybe even before November 1st. We think we could probably have it sometime during the month of October. These are the people, the best, the smartest, the most brilliant anywhere. And they've come up with the AIDS vaccine.
Just one minor fact check here at the end. There is no AIDS vaccine.
Well, not with that attitude, Brian. Experts are predicting that a vaccine for coronavirus may be ready by the end of the year, which would be the best Christmas gift ever. Right behind the board game Heartthrob. Bring it back, Milton Bradley. I want to choose my boyfriend from 60 gorgeous guys. Last week, however, the president contradicted his experts by promising a vaccine could be available to some people by Election Day. And if that timing sounds like he's politicizing the vaccine, it's because he is.
Just another sign that the Trump administration's race for a COVID-19 vaccine might have more to do with votes than the vaccine. The government's own CDC now telling states to prepare for large-scale vaccine distribution by November 1st. That is 2 days before the presidential election.
To push this out a couple days before the election is absurd and reckless, in my opinion, and this is all about politics.
Pushing out a vaccine too soon is reckless, but so is doing an interview in front of what I assume is a hand-painted portrait of Dr. Fauci. Girl, what kind of paint night was that? Even weirder, Fauci posed for it nude. They painted a shirt on him because his body was just too distracting. Trump wants the vaccine to be his October surprise, not to be confused with Trump's regular October surprise, a ghost. Look, we need a COVID-19 vaccine. It could save millions of lives, help rescue the global economy, and let me get back to doing what I like to do best, going to Yankee Candle, picking up all the candles, wet sniffing them, and putting them back on the shelf for someone else to buy. We want a vaccine, but it has to be safe and effective, not rushed out to meet an arbitrary political deadline. Typically, vaccine development takes 10 to 15 years, which allows for thorough research and testing. Scientists hope to shatter that by developing a vaccine in less than 1 year. That's lightning fast, totally unheard of, and only imaginable because many countries are united. I mean, like, kind of.
In the race to find a cure for COVID-19, the Trump administration says the U.S. will not participate in a global effort to develop a vaccine. In a statement to NBC News, the White House said in part, quote, "The United States will continue to engage our international partners to ensure we defeat this virus, but we will not be constrained by multilateral organizations influenced by the corrupt World Health Organization and China."
Why the f would you remove the U.S. from the global effort to fight COVID-19? That's like if all the countries threw a pizza party, but we brought our own personal pan. America isn't the only superpower racing through development. China and Russia have already approved vaccines before testing was complete.
The Chinese have approved a vaccine for their military, again without a phase 3 trial.
In the global race for a coronavirus vaccine, Russia said today it's already won, even though it hasn't completed phase 3 trials. The vaccine is officially called Sputnik V for vaccine.
What better name to give life-saving medicine than a program that claimed the lives of 17 dogs? In Russia, frontline workers are reluctant to be the first to try a vaccine that hasn't completed testing, and few, if any, have taken up the offer to be vaccinated. Putin's vaccine has been called just a political statement, so surprise, our president is doing exactly the same thing. But even if a vaccine were tested, ready, and wrapped up with a beautiful bow, the country is not at all ready to distribute it. While the U.S. has committed more than $10 billion to develop the vaccine, so far it's allocated exactly $0 toward getting it to people.
We're looking at getting more Americans vaccinated and potentially with 2 doses.
So many more doctors, clinics, pharmacies are needed to get to everyone.
We need to get them trained. We need to make sure they understand how to store the vaccine.
Most importantly, we need to make sure there are enough stickers and lollipops for not crying when you get your shot. The federal government is relying on local and state health departments to distribute the vaccine, but the U.S. public health system has been underfunded for decades. Health departments say they lack the necessary PPE, staff, money, and tools to educate people. Not only that, they also expect a shortage of needles and those little glass vials needed to hold the vaccine. So now we'll have to take the vaccine like we take our vodka, by soaking a tampon in it. Furthermore, the vaccine will need to be stored at sub-zero temperatures, which will require extra refrigeration, or else employees will really have to double-check the freezer when they grab their Halo tops. Thanks to their intense clinical testing, vaccines are among the safest medical products in the world. They save lives and are essential. That's why scientists warn us that historically, when it comes to their development, speed kills. You know what doesn't kill? Weed. Do weeds all the time. Oh, they make me so crazy and wild. Pot, grass, reefer. Makes no difference to me. Turned down for why? We don't have to look far back to find an example of why rushing a vaccine for political reasons is dangerous. In the 70s, Gerald Ford responded to an outbreak of H1N1 by skipping over protocols and rushing out a swine flu vaccine right before the 1976 election. It resulted in hundreds of people developing Guillain-Barré syndrome, which attacks the nerves. Not to be confused with Ghislaine-Maxwell syndrome, which, if you have, the president wishes you well. It's obvious why we should be relying on health experts here, not the president, and not just because he considers potato buns to be a vegetable. Even the pharmaceutical companies agree we need data.
Wall Street Journal reports several companies working to develop vaccines are taking an unusual step.
The companies, which include pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, will also refrain from submitting any vaccines for federal approval until there is sufficient data to prove the shots are safe.
It's crazy that we're living in a world where we're relying on drug companies to be the good guys. In the past, the best they've done is give some people boners for 4 hours. It may be dangerous, but also, it's funny. Trump sees a vaccine as the silver bullet for his re-election, but a vaccine shouldn't be tied to what happens in November. To end this pandemic, we have to put our faith in public health officials, regardless of how distracting their hot bods are. Vaccines are one of the most important necessary measures of preventative medicine. They protect us from all kinds of diseases, from measles to mumps to cooties. And there's a reason vaccines are so safe. They represent years of clinical testing. I mean, you wouldn't believe how long it took scientists to arrive at ... Vaccine development involves 4 steps, much like my early 2000s NSYNC obsession. I crushed on all of them, except Chris. I'm sorry, honey, I tried. You are a good person who made a bad hair decision for like 3 years. Vaccine development starts with preclinical testing, when scientists give vaccines to animals, such as mice, to see if they produce an immune response. No one wants to talk about it, but that's how Stuart Little died. Next comes phase 1, when scientists give the vaccine to a small number of people to ensure that it's safe and that it stimulates the immune system. This is followed by phase 2, when the vaccine is given to a slightly larger sample size, hundreds of people split into various groups. This tells us how the vaccine acts on different people, for example, on children, the elderly, or on people who will miss Tosh.0. Drugs just hit them different. Finally, vaccines enter phase 3 efficacy trials, when scientists give thousands of volunteers either the vaccine or a placebo and wait to see what happens. It's like that time the popular kids invited me to a high school party and tricked me into thinking I got drunk on O'Doul's instead of real beer. Phase 3 determines if vaccines will protect against coronavirus. This phase is especially crucial because it's when the sample size is large enough to reveal rarer side effects that may have been missed. It's also far more responsible than Trump's original plan, offering the virus a job as the new White House press secretary. In order to accurately predict how the vaccine will work, it has to be tested on thousands of people of different ages, ethnicities, sexes, and body sizes. But alarmingly, early COVID-19 vaccine trials have lacked diverse participants.
A critical piece of effective trials is having a diverse population of volunteers to ensure that the vaccine is safe and effective for all populations. And right now, some trials may be falling short.
Pfizer, amidst their ongoing phase 3 trial, announced that only 19% of their volunteers were Black or Hispanic. These numbers have disappointed some health officials.
Out of 45 participants, I was one of 2 Black individuals who participated.
Jesus, there was more diversity at the annual speed dating Poutine Fest in Toronto. Those were great nights. As they say in Canada, if the poutine is filling, the poontang is willing. Unlike moleskin notebooks or the movie Greenberg, the COVID-19 vaccine isn't just for white men. Recruiting Black volunteers for testing may be harder due to the country's history of forced medical testing on Black Americans, which has resulted in distrust of the medical industry. But Black Americans are twice as likely as white Americans to die from COVID-19, and that's why it's so important that they're represented in the trials. If just one person has a serious adverse reaction in a vaccine trial of 1,000 participants, it means more than 300,000 people could experience adverse reactions if everyone in America took it. At least when KFC tested out their donut chicken sandwich, they only risked the RoboCop kernel. I think it was weird for many reasons, but especially because feeding chicken to a RoboCop will kill him. Historically, vaccine testing moves slowly because the human body responds slowly. The vaccines most likely to be distributed in the coming months are mRNA vaccines. They're a brand new kind of vaccine that deploy a tiny snip of genetic code called messenger RNA to trigger the immune system. They're attractive because they may be cheaper, easier, faster to manufacture, and that. This breakthrough science is exciting, and we need this vaccine, but we also need to devote enough time to make sure it's safe.
It's going to take at least a year follow-up to know a vaccine is safe. So we're not going to know the most important thing for our children and our older people who are going to be sensitive when you're taking this to whether it's safe or not. You just aren't going to know.
I must warn that there's also the possibility of negative consequences, where certain vaccines can actually enhance the negative effect of the infection.
That warning is so stressful, even Fauci couldn't look us in the eye to say it. Either that or his notes included a diagram of that hot ass. Just as we need the vaccine to be safe, we also need people to trust it. In order for it to be effective, an estimated 200 million Americans have to take it. And folks, it is not looking so good.
Here's the NBC News SurveyMonkey poll. Less than half of Americans even want a vaccine at this point. Would you get a government-approved COVID-19 vaccine? Only 44% of the country says yes, 32% not sure, 22% say no. So even if we had it, it's not clear that everyone trusts the government anymore and plans to take it.
If a vaccine is 50% effective, as the FDA has promised it will be, but only 44% of people take it, that means only 22% of people are protected. I mean, can you imagine if you could only protect 22% of NSYNC? That's only enough to save Justin Timberlake and Chris Kirkpatrick's old hair, and why would you want to save either? A lot is riding on the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. In addition to fighting this pandemic, any misstep, be it in efficacy, messaging, or distribution, could embolden anti-vaxxers and erode America's already shaky public trust in vaccines. But make no mistake, we need vaccines. Vaccines are the only reason people don't get smallpox and Jonas Salk got laid. Most importantly, we need to trust our government to distribute a vaccine based on when it's safe and effective, not when it's most politically valuable. If Trump rushes a vaccine before it's ready, there's a chance things could get really ugly. Much like Chris Kirkpatrick's hair circa 1998. I'm sorry, Chris, it's just true. If you liked this video, hit subscribe and leave a pleasant comment below. Let's ride out the rest of this nightmare year together, okay? Okay? All right.